no, not the protection. Arden works perfectly for Dynasty, and now it's away. The last comes out for SK, and that's one of Hegman's best heroes.
Catherine's available, though. We could see that old-school triple CC composition where you just lock someone in place with the Catherine, the Celeste, and then something like a Cruel to round that out. We could have a near-perfect composition for Dynasty here.
The thing is, it's very difficult to do that when there's a Black Feather Lance on the other side, because not only is the Lance just crowd control that you have to worry about that can interrupt your CC train, but Black Feather Rose offensive, if he avoids one of those stuns, he's going to avoid almost all of them just because of the way this composition is going to work. They are going to grab that Krull, and I would not be surprised if it's Catherine, but they could also go for the Lyra if they want that sustain, which could be very important, except Lyra was banned because I wasn't paying attention to the second ban phase because I was more focused on the Black Feather Celeste. But, you know, they could, the Catherine I think would make a lot of sense here just because it's, you don't want to go for the Finn because of the situation where you end up not being able to necessarily protect both of your carries. And the Catherine can be up on that front line with the Krull as well.
Catherine would be the best thing unless they go for a Finn and try to go for a later game composition. Ooh. They go for the Adagio. So what Adagio does, it brings a lot of early game aggression because it has a lot of poke, a lot of dueling potential. Even though the heal is not as significant as it used to be before, the damage coming out of him, from his auto attacks is still very significant. And Dynasty have been playing very aggressive to allow PT Lamb to scale. This is perfect because now Cruel can go in, and honestly, Cruel Adagio can 2v3 teams if they're played correctly. It's an extremely strong duo.
Yeah, the Adagio makes Krull now much more of a threat than he previously was. Obviously, he still was a threat before, but now if you have those empowered basic attacks coming out from the Krull as well, you can start melting through opponents.
SK could pick Petal here, which would work perfectly, just because it counters Cruel and Adagio in the jungle, and later on when they're going to be diving on Celeste, the Petal ultimate, the combustion coming out, it both deals damage to Celeste and heals Black Feather, who's going to be on top of her. It's a composition that SK have used before, and it's worked well. The only thing is, Celeste has a lot of AoE damage, and there's a lot of AoE. I actually expect Dynasty to take this one if they play the aggression correctly.
I'm going to ask you for your favorite as well coming into this one, Bacon, because it feels like both teams have a very strong composition individually.
I think SK take this one because early game, Petal's going to counter the Krull. Late game, Black Feather's going to destroy the Celeste. I don't think people really understand just how hard of a counter this is once you get into the late game.
All right, well, we'll see if they can get to the late game and make that one happen. I'm curious to see how this one is going to pan out. It's time, though, to jump into our grand finals. Let us know who you're supporting. Hashtag Vainglory on Twitter. Is SK the favorite going to take this one? Or are Dynasty going to be the new usurpers? Can they win themselves a week of the Vainglory? It's time to pass it over to our casters and find out as we kick off our grand finals.
What a great finals we have in front of us, Ex-Scoundrel. SK versus Dynasty, and Dynasty, the new challengers to the European beasts here in summer. Here in autumn, as it is now cold and Halloweeny.
Halloweeny? Have we got to the Halloweeny stage yet, Darcy?
It's October. It's October.
I don't know, I just feel like Halloween doesn't come out really until like post 25th of October.
Man. We got the spooky Petal skin. So clearly, Ex-Scoundrel, it's time to get spooked here on the Halcyon Fold.
Clearly, I am not in the festive spirit quickly enough. OG combo coming out with Dynasty Get Me, by the way. The Adagio combo is something that has been tried, tested, and true in a lot of scenarios. You just, apply Gift of Fire with Cruel, and then you give him the Agent of Wrath, and suddenly you start chunking people down in that mid game. A little bit of sustain for PT Lamb in the late game as well, and we've seen how PT Lamb has been performing today. He has been on fire. There is that direct counter, in quotation marks, of the weapon power Black Feather, and it is Kavalafar piloting it, so it's one of his favourite picks in this particular situation. So Kavalafar on a comfort pick for him, which is obviously always a good thing, Darcy.
Not to mention the interaction between Petal and melee heroes that makes it very difficult in 2.8 for a melee hero to actually auto-attack the Petal if her minions are standing underneath her. And so something
I like
that
how you frame that
going to have to be... Well, it is an interaction. And, it is something that Recompense is going to have to be aware of heading into team fights.
Yeah, certainly can prove sometimes a small issue, but we'll cross that bridge if we ever come to it. Tyra's 3 crystal bits in tow, and again, something else that I think is often understated is how impactful those spontaneous combustions post level 6 with Frostburn in facilitating the dive potential of Kavalafar, in facilitating Hegman, who, by the way, has incredibly good lands in his ability to lock down that Celeste as well.
So, Dynasty will have to be very careful how they play the early game. Look at this, SK rotating around the backs of the jungle. Dynasty are moving down whilst Rickameza looks to try and steal the backs of his own. SK are looking for a fight here, and PTLM has been locked up, but Rickameza is putting the pressure onto Kavalafar. Kavalafar almost loses his life, sitting on just under 20 HP. Tyra is now in trouble. Rickameza able to get on top of the petal, but now it's turned, and first blood will go to Tyra's.
And there is the Petal versus Cruel matchup. It can be very difficult for the Cruel, who wants to sit on top of the Petal where possible. Petal able to kite back so nicely. Brilliant Githian walls from Hegman, by the way, something that shouldn't be understated. Life-saving Githian wall to keep Kavalafar alive. And then again, impales and Githian walls to allow Taris to kite back and let the Munions do the work against Rickameza. Difficult to weakness stack the Munions when they are 3 of them chomping away at you in the early game. Rickameza already on the back foot here, working towards what I imagine is going to be a tension bow first item, so just trying to go for that burst damage in combination, I think, with the Gift of Fire and Agent of Wrath.
Very good start for SK here. Like you mentioned, it's very nice to see Adagio picked up here on the Halcyon Fold. I know there's still many people who believe that Adagio has a place in competitive Vainglory.
Subtly name-dropping physics here.
You're the one name-dropping people, Scoundrel. I'm being very, very open with my statements, you will find. Dynasty, though, look at PT Lamb under the turret, just taken down by Munions! Tyra's on this pedal, providing a lot of threat with the heavy Prism, Eclipse Prism, and then double Crystal Bit. It's so much Crystal power augmented for Tyra's in this early game.
Wondering whether he's going to go towards the Shatterglass instead of the Frostburn again. This is something that North American Petals have been doing quite a lot. They just go towards the flat burst damage. You get a huge burst coming out from the spontaneous combustion, and obviously your Munions get tankier, which is always very good against the Celeste, and they also hit a little bit harder because they have that Shatterglass behind them. So I wonder whether Tyra's, given that he has got the gold for combination, and maybe they are just looking for the outright damage in the mid-game versus the Cruel and putting pressure onto the Celeste, we'll see him go for a Shatterglass. We'll have to see. Once he completes this rotation, we'll have a bit of a better idea where he chooses to spend his gold.
I'm saying Frostburn because he's heading to the shop and doesn't have gold for Shatterglass. So there it is. It is going to be a Frostburn coming out, which makes a lot of sense. You can slow down the Cruel. You can stop him from being a threat with this Adagio Gift of Fire. Now, SK are going to continue the pressure that they've put onto Rickameza. In the series between G2 and Dynasty, it was Rickameza diving into the jungle and stealing away, but Tyra's is doing just that to Rickameza. And I have to say, when you look at the hero pools of Rickameza and Tyra's, they're very similar players and what they like to pick up for their team. And so it's very interesting seeing this direct jungle matchup between Tyra's and Rickameza just for that one reason.
I mean, I've not seen Tyra's first grind, but you know, maybe one day. No, I'm even joking. But I like the Frostburn on Tyra's here. I think it's a pretty solid pickup. It facilitates Hegman. It facilitates Kavalafar. Look at this super early Crystal Sentry take. They're going to proc the Healing Flask as actually PT Lamb heads towards the backs of the SK Gaming lineup and just going to be able to steal those away, then head back to his own base afterwards. A bit of a clever rotation. He's not going to get caught out because he saw that Hegman and Tyra's were heading back slowly through that forward side jungle. And after that, he'll get a bit of extra gold in the back pocket, pick up an infusion at level 7. Probably not going to proc that until at least level 8. Got the workings of an Eve of Harvest here too.
Mowgli's just caught out here. Great Githian wall once more, and Impale from Hegman, who on this lance is just setting up so many opportunities for the side of SK. 3 kills for them. Now they're looking for this gold miner at 6.5 minutes. It won't be contested, I don't believe, unless PT Lamb wants to throw a Solar Storm across the wall. Is a little bit slow with this petal. And SK going to have to respect the fact that this turret is under siege as well. So Tyra is going to do this all by himself, and Hegman can come down to help with a single impale. Here's the Solar Storm, but it wasn't in range for the kill. It wasn't quite there. So SK able to secure that gold payout.
SK very happy. You can see one of the major things about Petal that we always talk about the way that Petal interacts with other heroes is that if you are the Petal and you're chasing someone down, especially if you have Frostburn, if they are unable to turn and put pressure on you, that's the perfect and ideal situation for a Petal to be in. Using those minions, chasing down the target, and obviously then using Trampoline offensively where needed, or Trampoline to reposition. If you are putting pressure on the Petal directly and forcing her into a defensive position, that's where Petal is put on the back foot a bit more. And you can see all of this game, it's Tyra is dictating the pace of these plays because Hegman sets it up and then the minions just come up.
Going to be Hell's Heart from Rikomeza, not finding a target at all. The Verse of Judgment did stun Hegman, but fairly unimpactful. And now SK looking for a re-engage. PT Lamb rooted up, 3-man Giphian War. Tyra's with a spontaneous combustion, and oh dear, Rikomeza blowing up as we speak. The fountain's there for Mowgli, and he's going to pop it preemptively, knowing that both his carries are low, and it's going to do a good amount of healing, get them up to full. Hegman this time missing his impale, but isn't punished. Able to sidestep that core collapse, and now SK without a minion wave may just look to rotate somewhere else. ETLM with those Helogenesis can do a lot of damage to the melee frontline that SK has.
We are now in the stage of the game, post level 8 Celeste, where she is going to start to seek those range advantages over the likes of Kabalafar and Tyra's. Tyra's actually trying to be aggressive here, but one of the things that Petal has always struggled with, and about why Petal seen less and less play in certain scenarios, is that the CP Petal is very vulnerable to these long range mages because they just absolutely destroy the minions from range.
Ooh,
they outrange her in terms of damage output. Ooh.
Forces a fountain.
Yeah. That's the,
one thing, Scoundrel, that is a little bit difficult, but like you mentioned, perhaps is kind of not too relevant, is that Helogenesis turned Supernova will clear out the Petal's minions, but it's a little bit difficult to aim it, and I'm not sure if you want to commit that much time on a Celeste clearing it out, but like you mentioned, the range advantage that Celeste has over Petal does keep Tyra's at bay, and whilst Black Feather's very good into a Celeste, not Rhyme. I just have it on my brain because it's Rikomeza. The Cruel is very good at negating the damage output that the Black Feather has. So, in theory, Dynasty have a lot of protective abilities in teamfights to set up with it. It really just depends on how far they let SK get in the lead.
Yeah, they actually are, like we said, at the stage of the game now where if they can try and maintain range, Rikomeza.
Will he be okay? No, not at all.
No, he won't.
Even
no, he won't. He certainly isn't.
It's going to be Sentry taken as well by SK. They've taken 2 already, and now Mowgli's in threat. He's in a bit of trouble. Hegman's dealing with PT Lamb on the side. Perhaps a little bit of mismatch in the shot calling. That's going to be a great Verse of Judgment. Solar Storm will hit 2, but the Fountain and Reflex blocks take the damage for them. Now SK will be moving around the map. PT Lamb is actually very low in energy, but we'll pop his healing flask to get some more back.
One of the stages of the game now where I think SK have got to be a bit more picky about where they choose to start their engages. PT Lamb has been the standout carry for Dynasty. There's the engage.
Kabalafar in trouble here. Does get bursted down. Rikomeza now going to be the prime target of SK as the fight continues, but PT Lamb takes down the Black Feather. Tyra's will fall as well. It's a double for PT Lamb. And Hegman, last man standing, will make it back to the turret. The energy is still an issue for PT Lamb, who has an Eve of Harvest and a Crystal Infusion in his back pocket. May mean that the turret will be slow to take for Dynasty, but they're going to start it up nonetheless. One more Helogenesis Supernova combination could take the turret down. Is going to be started up here. Hegman doing his best to keep this wave off of it. Not going to ever crash into the turret, and the turret will survive as well.
The aggressive maneuvers from Hegman. They baited out Kabalafar returning to the lane maybe quicker than they anticipated. But you are starting to see SK actually took the fight without any of their support items in tow, by the way. They didn't have Crucible up, they didn't have Fountain up, as Mowgli blocks out an Impale, but a great Githian Wall.
Okay, Rikomeza is in trouble. Fountain isn't there. 18 seconds left on cooldown, and Rikimeza will fall. This should be the turret falling as well. SK just come auto attacks will get it. Tyrus does go forward. Frostburn slowing PT Lamb. A Solar Storm will fly out, but it only hits Hegman. PT Lamb now trying to put the pressure back onto Gavalafar, but have to be careful. Tyrus is behind them and Hegman is to the side of them. Means there's a lot of collapse available, and they do collapse on in. First of Judgment will go out. 1-for-1 trade as PT Lamb picks up Tyrus. Now here comes Rikimeza up the lane and SK to retreat.
Iris has actually gone for the Frostbite into Shatterglass here, not expecting PT Lamb to pick up any early shielding, so just says I want this flat amount of burst damage available, as well as keeping my Munions as tanky as possible as well. Like that idea from him. But you are starting to see SK lose a bit of that dominance that they had in the early game, Dowsey, and it is now because engages are harder for them to seek. PT Lamb, 3 items on this Celeste. Like you said, slightly running out of energy from time to time, but the range advantage that he has over Tyrus and Cavalifar, it means that SK, if they don't find that footing immediately, they're going to get punished by the onslaught of the Heliogenesis from that massive range that the Celeste has at this point in the game. So it's up to Hegman, and that's why I find it interesting that Hegman hasn't prioritized something like War Treads, where I feel like the engage potential and the movement speed of a War Treads might be necessary to basically run in and dive onto PT Lamb. One other thing that I think they're going to have to cope with is obviously correct use of Crucible. You might sometimes want to Crucible out the Cruel Ultimate or Crucible out a Core Collapse, but you really have to wait and save it for Mowgli's Verse of Judgment in almost every case, because if you dive in and then get caught in Mowgli's Verse of Judgment without a Crucible, it's basically going to be free peel for PT Lamb, and it's going to stop you in your tracks.
One of the things that is a little bit underrated about Clockwork Scoundrel is the fact that it provides so much energy regen when you have both that and Eve of Harvest. With PT Lamb going Broken Myth, is lacking a little bit on that. Dynasty do decide to trade turret for Gold Miner. They should have been known, well aware that it was happening, but decided that map objective was good enough for them. Mowgli does get impaled, knocked up against the wall. There's an Echo, and he's going to get knocked again. Verse of Judgment cancelled, but a great Hell's Heart onto Gavalafar stops the fight. PT Lamb stacking his Broken Myth just a little bit, up to 4, looking for more. Tyrus gets a bit of damage over the wall. That's going to be Rikimeza going in. Core Collapse blocked up. A Solar Storm hits Gavalafar in the face, and Gavalafar takes so much damage in the process. There's no Fountain available from Hegman to heal him up. So SK will walk backwards, knowing that the Fountain from Mowgli is ready to go. Able to secure the Treant over the wall as well. PT Lamb taking it all. Now he has the goal to go finish a Clockwork.
Goodness me, Dowsey, this has been a very solid defense here from Dynasty Gaming. PT Lamb pretty close to finishing up that Clockwork from this point forward, and that will be this, you know, the spam of the Heliogenesis. There the Clockwork comes through. Light armor coming through to defend against Cavalifar as well, but now you're going to see onslaught of long-range, quick-paced, minefield-like Heliogenesis filling up the field, and it's going to make SK's life a living hell. They're going to have to search for flank plays. They're going to have to search for engages with Hegman, trying to utilize their vision control that they have of this Kraken area. Maybe this Kraken bait is what SK needs.
I love... Well, I'll talk about it in a second. PT Lamb in trouble, but a great stun once more. PT Lamb rooted up. Great kill from the Eve of Harvest. Will it be enough? No! Complete annihilation from Cavalifar on this Black Feather. And now he's looking to take down Rikimeza, who is very tanky. Doesn't have any damage output. Goes on to Tyrus looking for a kill, but he will get finished off by Cavalifar. He's now looking for his double, make it a triple if he finds it. And it looks like it shall go over to Hegman instead. An ace will come through for SK at the 1540. They can look to take the Kraken. And I was going to say, Scoundrel, I really like Rikimeza prioritization onto defense for PT Lamb. However, there is a lack of reflex block, like you mentioned, on PT Lamb, and that's proving to be troublesome against Hegman.
Yeah, again, there's a lot of things that he has to consider. Blocking, you want to make sure that he's blocking getting walls, impales, sometimes maybe even be able to block the slow coming out from on point is something that's been sort of proving an issue for Celestes as well, because slowing them down makes them that much easier of a target for Cavalifar. I think, you know, the opposite of cast a curse, cast a blessing. Well, just as we say that SK need to find a flank play, they find a flank play, and that's what opened up that Kraken for them. That's the opening that they needed to now start to push an advantage. It's going to be harder to flank when you have just a singular lane to work with here, though, so this will be the risky time. Often, you know, when you score a goal in football and people say, you hear the commentators say, well, the riskiest time for a counter goal is just after you've scored a goal. That's how I feel Kraken is in Vainglory. The riskiest time for you to fight is often when you've got Kraken, and they're actually going to search for it here.
They are looking for the fight here. Great double stun onto PT Lamb, onto Mowgli. Mowgli pops out the Versa Judgment, but PT Lamb's in trouble. Solar Storm will heal him. The Evil Harvest heal is huge, and that's enough to take down the Black Feather here. The prediction game is true, Scoundrel. And I think it's the wide open space that is the base that makes the fight so difficult to be had. I've been thinking about it a lot recently in my spare time, about Vainglory and things like that, Scoundrel.
I just like to think about the base of Vainglory in my spare
I do,
time,
because
Darcy.
look how big it is. It's so big, and it's the most wide open area that you can fight in, which means that flank plays
You
happen far
just
too
say that
often.
sentence again.
It is so big, Scoundrel. So big.
Okay, it's a very big base.
It is.
I feel like I baited you into something completely unnecessary. Anyway, I think also you have to be aware of the fact that one of the main strengths for SK happens to be that ability to utilize vision control to look for a flank onto PT Lamb, to take advantage of the fact that he doesn't have that reflex block. But in that scenario there's no surprises that can be had for SK. You just have to run full force at them. And even when they ran full force at them, got an Echo Githian wall stun onto PT Lamb, he still survived. Somehow, because of the Solar Storm. I think he built up the Broken Mistax, and that Solar Storm just heals for a chunk if you get it across multiple targets and hit every single projectile. So worries for SK, Dynasty, how many times can you catch them out in the flank? Or how many times... Whoa.
How many times can you catch out Cavalify with a Hell's Heart is the question. The hero with the most CC immunity gets hit once more. SK are in trouble, Scoundrel. Dynasty with a Solar Storm will find Tyras, and now it's Cavalify the main target as Rikomeza charges forward. PT Lamb trying to slow, finding those Frostburn Helogenesis, but War Threats should survive. Purchased immediately there by Hegman to get them out of harm's way. And Dynasty, the unlikely competitors, are bringing it towards SK. They were always my dark horse of a team, Scoundrel, with just such great players and mechanical skill and knowledge and theory crafting. They've really struggled to find themselves and come together. It's been a couple of seasons of disappointing results, I think, for the team. But maybe this is the start of something new.
I think SK have to realize that there is now the point in the game where several times they've tried to run headlong into Dynasty Gaming and have ended up coming on the worst end of the team fight. You can't do that. You have to be sneaky. You have to try and find a sneaky Lance role play or find Cavalifar a flank on PT Lamb, and that's exactly what Cavalifar is looking for right now.
Trying to get onto him, but another stun. Rikomeza doesn't miss. Cavalifar's block does. PT Lamb will be threatened here. Hegman looking to try and get in, but a great Solar Storm picks up Tyras. There's the core collapse onto K-Val. Versa Judgment will go down and stuns up Hegman as Rikomeza finishes the Cavalifar Black Feather. It's shut down and an ace comes through for Dynasty. The Kraken's ready to be taken.
And this is the comeback Dynasty mounting. Unbelievable. Rikomeza has been pinpoint with these ultimates. You just cannot get hit by those if you're Cavalifar and you're literally sitting on top of your target. If you get stopped for even an instant as a weapon power Black Feather when trying to take out the likes of Celeste, you're going to get shut down. And what's been happening in these last few fights, you're seeing the weaknesses of a Petal as well as she falls off towards the later ends of the game. You're seeing the strength of the Celeste into the Petal, especially once Celeste is at this point with those 4 CP items to back her. And SK had massive mid-game advantages. Got to a point though where they just weren't able to consistently hammer their head against the door, because that door is now metal and they need to find a unique way to open it. It's seen some of the fights that they've won is where Cavalifar has found that flank and Hegman has actually landed an Impale and they've got Chain CC locked onto PT Lamb. If any of those individual facets don't hit, you're just going to lose the fight as SK.
Death Bush has been set up by SK. Blairs are being laid down by Mowgli. He splits up the team as they come on through, and Impe will miss. A core collapse connects, and Rickamezo's hiding. Kavalafar's charging.
Where's Kavalafa going?
Doesn't hit. No, it stuns nonetheless. It's a full stun. Oh dear, this Black Feather is just dead. There's no way he escapes, surely. Maybe I spoke too soon. He does go down, but they've taken out PT Lamb. Rickameza now will charge on in. It's the Petal Cruel matchup. He's trying his best. Tyra's trying to avoid it. Gets impaled. Rickameza in a bit of trouble, but he will continue. He's forced, and he will take down his arch nemesis of a Petal. Only Hegman remains, and may I remind you that the Kraken is on the Vein Crystal turret, securing one already. Hegman rolling his way home. Rickameza is charging on forward to join this Kraken as she slowly takes the base. It's 13 seconds till Kavalafar respawns. Make it 5 seconds roughly as the